When you hear this,
they've got him again!
And this,
He scored!
And this,
oh boy, what a move by Embiid!
You think of us. We are sports. 97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Friday edition of Game Night, the first Friday of the month of June. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on 97.3 ESPN. Glad to have you guys on board the show today. We're going to talk a lot of Phillies this hour because heading into a weekend where it's not a good feeling right now. And I understand for a lot of Philly fans, they want to hit that panic button. They want to panic a little bit. So we will get to the Phillies this hour, plus some next day reactions to what we saw with the NBA yesterday, what it means. Frank Vogel was hired today. Nick Nurse had his introductory press conference yesterday. Last night, the Heat got manhandled by the Nuggets. All that and more this hour. Frank Klose, our 97.3 ESPN.com Phillies beat writer, will join us coming up. He joins Mike Gill for the Phillies mailbag every Tuesday on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. He will join us today to look ahead to the Phillies weekend and what is next for the Phils. And as always, you can join the conversation, 609-403-0973. That is the text board. You also can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. And I want to start with this. Going back and kind of, consuming a lot of what we have seen in the last 24 hours. I think last night was a brutal example of how sports can be very unforgiving. The Miami Heat had an insane run to the NBA Finals. And I will never say what a team should or shouldn't do in certain situations because, everything looks better in 2020 vision. Maybe the Heat have a different starting lineup in game 2 because of Tyler Hero. How does that impact? We'll have to wait and see. But I don't think for 1 second we should take last night and say Eric Spoelstra or Michael Malone are more or less of a coach, or Jimmy Butler is more or less of a superstar, or Jokic is more or less of a superstar. These players are who they are. And when you look back on what got these teams here, you have to give a lot of credit to both of these teams for getting here because, frankly, most people, and I say most people, would have had zero interest in picking these teams to be in the NBA Finals. So you have to consider, if you're being honest, what does it really mean for a team like the Sixers to not be here? I'm watching that game last night. It's so obvious that the Miami Heat are outgunned and being outmaneuvered in this game. But they got here, and they deserve a ton of credit for it. And I hope the series goes 6 games. I got a feeling on my, inside of me that it's going to be a 5-game series at this point. But it's one of those interesting situations where last night you see a lot of the questions that we have in our area with the Sixers as part of the conversation last night. Can you win a championship with a big man? Obviously, we're seeing the Nuggets probably going to do it. Can one man make a massive impact? Yes, because you saw what happened with Jimmy Butler basically not giving you a lot of offense scoring last night. He gave you a lot of assists, but he didn't give you a lot of points. So one guy can make that big of a difference. And so for the Sixers moving forward, you have to have to figure out what the combination is to get into the vault that is getting Joel Embiid out of the second round. And Coach Jim Lynam was on with Mike Gill earlier. I thought he brought up an excellent point. And if you missed Coach Lynam's conversation with Mike Gill, you could hear it tomorrow on the Best of the Sports Bash tomorrow morning, before Billy Schwein in the locker room on 97.3 ESPN. But Coach Lynam said, look, maybe there's something, he told Mike Gill, he said, maybe there is something that Nick Nurse knows about load managing with Kawhi that will help him handle Joel Embiid. And maybe that is part of the conversation we need to be having. Maybe part of the conversation we need to be having is, why is Nick Nurse the head coach of the Sixers right now? Is it potentially because he knows how to manage a player like Joel Embiid, where maybe Doc Rivers doesn't? Now, I know some of you out there, you want to start texting in at 609-403-0973. You want to DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. I know some of you out there might be saying, hey, Joel Embiid's always injured. The coach has nothing to do with it. And I get that. That is totally a reasonable, understandable perspective. But on the flip side, you might also be texting in or wanting to say, but Josh, didn't Pascal Siakam lead the NBA in minutes played per game? Both are true. So how could Nick Nurse be different? How could Nick Nurse bring out of Embiid what has not been brought out of him yet? Well, I point to history. I point to the history of the majority of star players in this league have their peak success with their third head coach. It happened with Jordan. It wasn't his first coach. It wasn't his second coach. It happened with LeBron. Wasn't his first coach. Wasn't his second coach. So, what does it mean for Joel Embiid? By the way, Giannis Antetokounmpo, not with his first coach and not with his second coach. You put Steph Curry in that same category. Steph Curry didn't get to where he was, not with the first coach, not with the second coach, not with the third coach. It was the fourth coach for him. Shaquille O'Neal, similar situation. Not the first, not the second. That's when he became peak Shaq, right? So, what does that mean for the Sixers? Is it possible that part of what needs to happen for Joel Embiid is for him to have a third different voice in his ear? And this is not a negative against Doc Rivers or Brett Brown necessarily. I know a lot of Sixer fans disliked both men for a variety of reasons. But I don't think that one person has all the answers. It is completely unfair for any of us to expect Brett Brown or Doc Rivers or an assistant like Sam Cassell or an assistant like Monty Williams with the Sixers or any one or two or three or four or five people to have all the answers. Sometimes it takes an extra set of eyes who have never looked at a situation to be able to walk into a room and say, hey, this ain't right. Something's got to change here. We have all had jobs where we have worked at a job for a long time. And maybe at that job, you are the person who says, this has to change. That has to change. We got to do better at this. We have to do better at that. And nobody listens to you. And then all of a sudden, they hire a new manager or a new whatever, and that person starts saying the same things that you were saying, and you're looking around like, why is everybody listening to him and not to me? Maybe that's where Joel Embiid is at. Maybe the problem is Joel couldn't hear it from who he was hearing it from. Maybe whatever he needs to get him to that next level has to come from a new voice. There's a possibility that there were things that Brett Brown was saying to him and Doc Rivers was saying to him and assistant coaches like Sam Cassell and Dave Yeager were trying to communicate to Joel Embiid. There might have been things that in the previous coaching staff that assistants were trying to communicate to Joel Embiid. And it just wasn't computing. And then maybe when he sat down with Nick Nurse for dinner last weekend and Nick Nurse said some of those same things, Embiid didn't hear it as, oh, it's the same thing everyone else has been telling me. Maybe this was the moment in time he was open to hearing it. I always go back to the story. If you guys ever read, we've had Jeff Pearlman on the show a couple times over the years here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on a Friday night. He wrote the book 3 Ring Circus about the Los Angeles Lakers with Shaq and Kobe that won the championship. And one of the stories he tells in the book was about how when the Lakers hired Phil Jackson, Shaquille O'Neal was not interested. Not interested at all in playing for Phil Jackson. He had a lot of reservations of playing for a guy like Phil. He had a predisposed perspective. So what happened? Phil Jackson asked Shaq to come and join him at his ranch so they could meet each other, so they could talk in person, so there could be some communication to try to figure out how to make this work. And they did make it work. They won 3 championships. They found a way to make it work. Because as Shaquille O'Neal said later, Phil Jackson was one of the best things that ever happened to him. Because he said that Phil convinced him to buy in. And Shaq got into the best shape he'd ever been in his life. And Shaq was more committed than ever before in his life. And you look at Shaquille O'Neal's numbers, and you look at what he did before Phil Jackson got there, and then what he did with Phil Jackson. And you find out that before he had Phil Jackson, his career average was 27 points per game. Pretty good, right? 12 rebounds per game. Really good. But what did he do with Phil Jackson? I'll tell you what he did. He got more efficient. See, the numbers were almost the same. The points, the rebounds, the blocks, it was all the same. But Shaq became almost a 60% field goal percentage shooter with Phil Jackson. Before that, he wasn't that high. You know what he was before he got Phil Jackson? He was covering percentage points lower. So maybe for a guy like Joel Embiid, it's not about changing your stat line. The improvement that maybe needs to be made for a guy like Joel Embiid has to be something completely else. And maybe Nick Nurse is to Embiid what Phil Jackson was to Jordan and O'Neal. Maybe Nick Nurse can be to Embiid what a Steve Kerr was for Steph Curry, or what a Eric Spoelstra did with LeBron James, or what a Mike Budenholzer did with Giannis Antetokounmpo, or whatever scenario you want to pick up. Sometimes a new voice makes a huge difference for a superstar player. And by the way, Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra, for those who might be wondering, is his 4th different head coach. Something to think about there. Josh Hennig here on GameNight 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN Mobile. GameNight being brought to you by Jenkins & Sons. One call does it all. No need to call the drain guy, the heater guy, or the plumbing guy, because Jenkins technicians have got you covered. From new heating and air installations, service and maintenance, ductless air conditioning systems, water heaters, boilers, drain cleaning services, leak repairs, whatever you need, just call 609-641-6440 or visit them online at jenkinsandsons.com. Coming up, we will get into Frank Vogel, Wildwood Zone being hired a little bit later in the show by the Phoenix Suns. But coming up next, we're going to get into the Phillies with Frank Klose, who covers the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. You hear his Phillies mailbag every Tuesday with Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. But I want Frank to come on today because where are the Phillies heading into the first week of June? We know last year they fired their manager heading into the first weekend of June. They had a new manager. This year, it's the same manager. But is it fair to say these are not the same problems? I don't think so. We'll get Frank Klose's answers on all of that coming up next. Here, Josh Hennig hanging out with you on a Friday night on 97.3 ESPN.
Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwein. Mike Carlin joins me in the studio. We will discuss the Philadelphia Phillies' lackluster performance so far. The NBA and NHL championships have begun, and we will recap all the action. Hour 2, it's the Beach Patrol Report, brought to you by McCann Realtors of Seattle City and the Ocean City Lifeguard Alumni Association. This week, we'll hear from Captain Dave Funk of the Ventnor City Beach Patrol and from former Lieutenant of the Ocean City Beach Patrol, John McShane. All that and more. It's the locker room with Billy Schwein, Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN.
Powerball is now up to $262 million. With a jackpot win like that, you could business you've always wanted to start. Why not take a chance on the Powerball? Jersey.
Trade offers?
Ouch! That was a blindside. That's a personal foul.
Don't get blindsided by low trade offers. Bring any trade to Matt Platt Kia. Just because you don't see your new Kia on the lot doesn't mean you can't be driving it home tomorrow. Select from hundreds of new and certified Kias.
It's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
Matt Platt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
With summer savings at the Home Depot, we have laundry appliances that just fit your space, fit your needs, and fit your budget. Like a new LG laundry set with 6 motion technology, using different wash motions to get clothes cleaner. And sensor dry to automatically adjust drying time, all making laundry quicker, cleaner, and easier on your clothes. Final days to save up to 30% on select appliances plus $100 off select laundry sets at the Home Depot ends June 7th. Pricing valid May 18th through June 7th, 2023. U.S. only. See store or online for details.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
The Dell Technologies Summer Sale event starts now with limited quantity deals on select performance PCs with Windows 11 Pro. Save on select Vostro laptops with built-in security features and select Latitude laptops with enhanced privacy, collaboration, and connectivity. Save on essential accessories, plus free shipping and special financing with Dell Business Credit. Dell Technologies recommends Windows 11 Pro for business. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL. That's 877-ASK-DELL. Offered to business customers by WebBank, who determines qualifications for and terms of credit.
Homeowners trust Jenkins Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Business owners trust Jenkins too for light commercial services. No need to call the drain guy, the heater guy, or the plumbing guy. Call Jenkins. One call does it all. For new heating and air installation, service and maintenance, ductless air conditioning systems, water heaters, boilers, oil service, plumbing, and drain cleaning services. Call now and learn about rebates through the HVAC Energy Efficiency Program, brought to you by South Jersey Gas. Call 609-641-6262 or visit jenkinsandsons.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
We'll get you guys' thoughts and comments a little bit later in the hour. Text coming in at 609-403-0973. Your DMs in the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank Seattle. Phillies got a new lineup they're trotting out there. 3 straight lefties at the top of the lineup. I don't even know if it's going to matter or not, but they basically got to come out this weekend with some wins, or as we all know, and Frank Klose, I'm sure, knows from his Twitter, at Frank Klose on Twitter, Philly fans are losing their minds right now about this team, even though, as Rob Thompson said, I double-checked for Rob Thompson. Yes, the last few NL champs have all been under 500 heading into June. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you, Josh?
So is it as simple as, hey, it's too early to get worried, or are there things to actually worry about?
Well, two things to worry about. The first would be obviously the pitching. As of 6:20 p.m. on Friday, the Phillies have no starter for Saturday. I think they're just going to probably figure out who didn't pitch today, and hopefully Zach Wheeler gives them a lot of innings and just say, "All right, you're first." I mean, it's not a good situation to be in, especially with Taijuan Walker having a lot of short outings. Now, after his last outing, people were wondering if he was hurt coming out after 4, but it was just no, that he just didn't have it that day. And then you have Ranger Suarez, who probably was rushed back a little bit early and is still trying to get into the groove. I think he's put together a couple admirable performances lately that kind of give you some hope, but Phillies are razor thin in the pitching department, and I think they thought that maybe Andrew Painter, I know some were very optimistic about Andrew Painter, but beyond that, they thought, okay, well, we have Bailey Falter, we have Christopher Sanchez, we have Michael Plasmar, we have Nick Nelson. Now, all those guys, somebody's going to be able to start. Well, didn't really go so well, and their top prospects, Griff McGarry, who just came back from injury, he's really not looking like he's in any way to help them yet, and McAble's kind of struggled at Double-A Reading. So there's no clear fifth starter on this team right now, and to me, the problem with that hurts the most when you have the bullpen throwing, as we saw with the last Dylan Covey start. They threw 7 1/3 innings. Thankfully, they were on the road and didn't have to pitch that last inning. But that's a lot of innings to take out of your bullpen, and there's like a trickle-down effect for days to come when that happens. So that is a real concern. So even if they can squeeze out a win with a bullpen game, well, guess what? Then your bullpen's taxed for 3 days. By the way, I'm only on problem number 1 still after all that. I'll tell you what, I'll say the second one because I think it's a lot quicker. But this lineup, this team was put together expecting to have Rhys Hoskins in it. You lose him at the last possible minute when it's too late to do anything substantiative to make up for it. And then you see the offense not really functioning the way that it's supposed to function.
So let's get to that pitching thing for a minute, because you mentioned a lot of prospects' names, Painter and Abel and McGarry, and obviously we know Nick Nurse is working his way back, but
Nick Nurse.
It really? What's that?
You just say Nick Nurse?
I'm sorry, not Nick Nurse. Nick Nelson.
Sorry, yeah. I just had to give you a hard time on that one.
No,
so
that's good.
Obviously, he's on your mind. Hey,
yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nick Nelson's making his way back, right? Well, let me ask you this. Can this organization really depend on any of those guys anytime soon? And if not, is it time to maybe say, look, we got to give up one of these guys to get somebody for now?
Well, here's the problem. There's not many teams that are out of it right now. I mean, as bad as the Phillies have been, they're 3.5 games out of a wild card spot, right? So who's out of it, right? I mean, I think we saw early on, we would have said, okay, well, of course the Pittsburgh Pirates are always going to be out of it. Well, guess what? They hung in first place for a little while. They finally fell off the face of the earth a little bit, but they were hanging in. Arizona Diamondbacks, everybody's like, oh, trade for Christian Walker, trade for so-and-so. Well, guess what? They have the best record in the NL, or tied for at the moment. So actually that the series this weekend between the Braves and the Diamondbacks, they're basically fighting for the top spot in the league. So a lot of these teams that you would expect to be potential trade partners just have no incentive to trade yet. They're not going to give up when they have a shot. So, and even one of the teams that I thought had a couple extra starters because they just moved 2 starters to the bullpen were the Boston Red Sox, and Chris Sale now is hurt. So nobody's really got this depth available that the Phillies could add. And you saw even last year at the trade deadline, Noah Syndergaard was the best they could do, really. And they didn't even trust him to take the ball in the playoffs. So this offseason, you saw the same dearth of starting pitching. They spent a lot of money to bring in Taijuan Walker. And really behind that, who was there really to get? So there really wasn't a lot of options, even at the end of spring training, which is why I think they thought that, the depth that they had could make it. Nobody's going to trade you right now either. So that's the problem. So a lot of these guys are indeed prospects, but that they could trade. I think of their most tradable assets, you might have to look at some of their outfield prospects, but again, there's nobody that's overwhelming that I think would net you anybody that's going to be a top of the rotation starter. I mean, there's a report I think I saw yesterday that the Guardians might trade Shane Bieber. Of course, you'd want Shane Bieber if you can get your hands on him, but what are the Guardians going to say? All right, give me Andrew Painter. Well, you're going to say, well, no, not that. So I don't really know. It's there'll be a lot of competition for him. So it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a lot like last year when the Phillies did the best they could, which was trade their failed prospect and why do I keep forgetting his name all of a sudden? I watched him strike out enough. But Mickey Moniak traded for Noah Syndergaard. That was probably the best they could do then. They might not do much better than that this year.
All right. So here's what so then with all that being said, okay, how does this team bridge a gap between June 2nd and July 30th? Like, let's say you have to, you can't think you can't do anything right now. So what can be done over the next several weeks, pitching wise, to get this team? Because, I mean, Ranger Suarez actually had his best game the other day. The problem is the offense gave him nothing offensively. And then a couple days later, you see a guy like Aaron Nola struggle, right? Like, it's just like this conundrum where it's like one guy struggles, offense scores 5 runs. The other guy does well, offense scores. So how can at least we mitigate the pitching issue?
Well, the guys you have to pitch better. You can't deal with 4 inning starts out of Taijuan Walker. Yeah, you are encouraged by Ranger Suarez, right? I mean, again, he's just coming back off injury. You kind of expected him to take a little while, but Aaron Nola has to be better. Now, Zach Wheeler gave them the best pitching performance of the season the other day. Maybe he can repeat that tonight against a Nationals team. You want to see more of that, but the guys you have to be better. And so that if you have to throw a bullpen game, they're not already exhausted. It's kind of concerning that that every 5th day you're going to tax this bullpen. Then you see a lot of guys coming up and down. You'll see the constant shuffling of the Junior Martes and the Luis Ortizes and the Eric Yulmans and all these pitchers that aren't supposed to be on the roster at all, going back and forth up and down 476, to Lehigh Valley. So I just can't underscore enough that they're built around their 2 top pitchers, Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. They have to pitch like it, and if they pitch like it, then you know what? Zach Wheeler goes out and gives them 8 tonight again, like he did against Atlanta. You don't worry so much if you say, okay, well, we'll do Brogdon for 2, and then we'll go to Vasquez for a couple, and then hopefully then next thing you know, it's the 6th inning and we have a lead. I mean that's you might be able to squeak by, but if you're getting 4 or 5 innings max out of every starter, it's disaster written all over it.
Ironically enough, I believe Aaron Nola leads the National League in innings pitched in of itself, which is, I can't even believe that's a thing, that's a reality. But I digress. Frank Klose joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, at Frank Klose on Twitter. His Phillies mailbag every Tuesday with Mike Gill on the Sports Bash over at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, let's get to the hitting, because we were told last year, Frank, hey, our hitting will outdo all of our defensive issues, right? And that didn't happen. This year, the idea was, our hitting will pick up the pace. We signed Trey Turner, and Trey Turner's basically having the worst year of his career at this point. So what is the problem with this lineup? Is it just guys are in slumps right now all at the same time? Or is there some bigger issue at fault here?
Well, they need to play better. I just said that about the pitchers, but Kyle Schwarber needs to be better than a 160 hitter. Bryce Harper's been good enough, way more than you would expect from him, but but certainly they were without him a while, so that's good. You went from 2 bench players playing every night. Now we have 1 on this Phillies lineup every night. But Trey Turner got to play better. JT Realmuto got to play better, and that's especially Turner and Realmuto, because this is a very left-handed team right now with all the injuries. Alec Boehm, the one who drove in the most runs. I know RBIs isn't a stat like it used to be in most people's minds, but he did make a lot of contact, right? That's where the runs batted in came from. You're without him now, so you're paying a lot of money to those 3 players I just mentioned. They simply have to play better. The professionals, they got them because they thought they wouldn't have to worry about stuff like this. And they simply just have to play better. You got to hope that a series like this in Washington, D.C., Schwarber's going back to D.C., Harper's going back to D.C., Turner's going back to D.C. You got to hope this lights something under them. I mean, I'm bewildered too, because those 3 players had a great deal of success with hitting coach Kevin Long. I've heard a few people say, "Oh yeah, fire the hitting coach." Well, guess what? He's the one who made them to begin with. I don't think they're going to go firing him, right? But you got to think that if something's off kilter in their swings, he's the guy that can help them find their old way. So I certainly don't want to think that. But
I mean, Frank, why are sports the only thing on earth where the solution to everything is for someone to lose their job? Like, why is that a thing only? Like, why can't it be like you have said now 3 times they're not doing their job. They're not playing well enough. They're not doing their job. They're not playing. Like, why can't it just be these guys not playing well? Why does it have to be the manager, the coach, the GM? Like, at some point, it's like you're giving Trey Turner $300 million. You didn't give Kevin Long $300 million.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think we're so used to there being some sort of massive shakeup that all of a sudden everybody gets it. I mean, it's not going to come. They're not going to fire Rob Thompson after last year, right? I think he certainly earned the opportunity to pull them out of this funk. Kevin Long, you're not going to fire him after last year, right? So, especially as one of the most respected, and I think he's the highest paid hitting coach in the game, right? So a lot of this has to fall on the players. And when you're signing top dollar free agents with the veteran pedigree, I think that's a very reasonable expectation to say you need to play better. I mean, this isn't like the Philadelphia Phillies teams that featured every night Jorge Alfaro and Nick Williams and Tommy. What's the? I swear I'm losing my mind lately just watching this Phillies team. Tommy Joseph. Why am I forgetting all their names? Jeez. Maybe I need sleep. I don't know.
Tommy Joseph was a while ago, though.
Right. But my point is, these aren't those types of players that cycled through this rebuild, right? These right. are premium major league players, right, paid to be premium major league players.
Players that other teams would like to have.
Yes, absolutely. And they got to do their jobs. And you know what? It sucks that Rhys Hoskins is gone. He was very much a leader on that team and the center of the clubhouse. But somebody's got to put on their big boy pants and lead the way. I mean, someone's got to step up. None of those. Now, I get it that Trey Turner just got here. It's probably not him, but some combination of Schwarber and Harper or Castellanos, they've all been here. They were all part of that team last year. Somebody's got to step up and say, hey, let's get our act together, because that shakeup is going to not come from firing somebody. It's got to come from within. Somebody's got to get them in the right direction, and they got to start winning games, especially these next 2 series, right? Their gift right now is that they have 3 against the Nationals and 3 against the Tigers, teams that on paper they very much should beat. But if they don't, that's going to be trouble. They can pull themselves out of a lot of things here, right? I mean, to me, their toughest schedule is still to come. So if they're not able to pull themselves up now with 6 games against basement teams, then I don't know when it's going to be.
So I mentioned earlier what Rob Thompson said about, hey, a lot of the teams that have won the National League, they haven't started out so well. So I went back and did a little research, okay? The 2018 Dodgers won the National League. They started the season 17-30. The 2019 Nationals started the season 24-33. The 2021 Braves started 25-26, and we know how the Phillies did last year. So what does that trend say to you, Frank Klose?
Just as it's a long season, and the the Nationals, man, I remember that really bad Nationals start when they went on to the World Series. There were calls to fire their manager, very much so, and I was shocked that they didn't. And you know what? They hung in there. So, but a lot of those players are actually on the Phillies right now. So, um, so maybe there's a chance that they will turn it around. But look, it really is a long season. It's a grind. In the beginning, you kind of think, oh, well, I kind of have some time, but there's got to be a sense of urgency building at this point. I mean, I think for all those teams, they're all teams that I watched a lot of. Certainly the Braves, we saw a lot of that Braves team. But when we looked at that Braves team that year, it was kind of like what we're saying now. Like, hey, this is a better team than they're playing. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And then eventually they got their act together and went on a tear. The thing that worries me about this Phillies team is with no fifth starter in sight, kind of makes it really hard to string a bunch of wins together, right? So I think that's my big concern. I don't know where they have to keep claiming people on waivers till they find the right fifth starter. I don't know, but to me they got to string together some wins. And man, if today doesn't go well and they have a taxed bullpen after tomorrow, I'm really worried about their ability to do what those teams that you mentioned just did, right? So Zach Wheeler going deep today. Ranger Suarez hopefully can give you a lot on Sunday, but in between, man, they a few guys got to give him a couple innings. I don't know. Dylan Covey's still around. I assume he might pitch a couple of them. I don't know, but that's the thing that I think sets this Phillies team apart from those teams. There's no clear path for them to string a bunch of wins together, in my estimation.
Before I let you go, we got a mailbag style question from Steven Ventnor listening into the show. He texted into the show and said, can you please ask Frank why no one is talking about Kyle Freeland or CJ Cron from Colorado for the Phillies?
I've heard people talk about them, but again, are the Rockies necessarily out of it? I don't know.
They have one less win in the Phillies.
Right. So I which basically puts them like 4 games out of the wild card, right? I mean, I think that's the issue right now. I mean, if you are the Rockies front office, they signed a couple players, right? They're trying to make it look like, I mean, they spent a fortune just last year on a 7-year contract for a third baseman who can't play third base anymore. Like, I mean, I think they're showing they're trying, right? So if I'm a fan in Colorado and my team starts selling off pieces the 1st of June, am I going to want to go to games that summer, or is it like they're saying, well, hey, I quit? So teams don't want to communicate that to their fans. Now that's why this often goes up to the trade deadline, because the teams that's far enough along, the teams can finally say, well, yeah, I guess at this point, we're out of it, so we can make a trade. So, yeah, I mean, Freeland, he's having a so-so season, but yeah, he's a starter, so I like that name. Cron, I'm not a big Cron fan personally, but I actually would right now do the Mike Gill suggestion and see if you can. I don't know where he is in DFA limbo, because when they designate someone for assignment, they're just kind of hanging out there. But especially without Alec Boehm, Jesus Aguilar, I think would be a good fit for a temporary situation, and either he stays or you cut him later. I don't. But I think those bigger type moves don't happen to the deadline because of that reason. And by the way, CJ Cron's been on the IL too, so he's not currently available for anybody, even his own team right now. So, but yeah, I think if you're the Phillies, you look what opportunities show up. I mean, remember a few years ago, Jay Bruce came to the Phillies at an off time, just right place, right time. June 1st, you had some guys opting out of minor league. Nothing that's going to really excite you, but I know Drew Wells doesn't excite anybody necessarily. But yeah, you just kind of do what you can, and then by the end of July, that's when teams like the Rockies usually admit to their fan base they're not going to win, and then maybe they can make some deals. But yeah, if I either of those names could be good. I don't really know, when Cron is going to be active again. but he was having some back issues, I think, some back spasms that usually are really tough on a power hitter. So,
See, I have zero interest in Crone.
I was never a big fan.
I went through his splits. His numbers are way better at Coors Field than anywhere else. Like his batting average is significantly better in his career at Coors Field. So, to me, that's a clear sign that this guy's, his value is inflated because of where he's playing, not because of who he is. Like I remember, like the thing with Todd Helton. Remember the thing is that like his batting average almost better on the road than it was at home, kind of thing. And then people were like, "How is that even possible?" Like, CJ Cron is not Todd Helton. Like Todd Helton is an amazing hitter. CJ Cron's just a guy who's happened to be a good enough smasher to get an all-star appearance.
He's not a high on base guy necessarily either. So I mean, I will say if you're trying to replace Rhys Hoskins, at least he saw a lot of pitches. That really did slow down the game and for his teammates. If nothing else, even when he was going bad, he would still draw some walk. We always have said he's a streaky guy, but what they miss about Hoskins is he always saw a lot of pitches, and that helps get the opposing pitcher out of there sooner. It helps your teammates see what the pitcher has. It just slows it down, especially now, like with the pitch clock. Hoskins at bats would really help slow things down a little bit. So they'll need to kind of replace that. But right now, if they don't have Alec Boehm, I worry about the right-handed gap that's even widened now. So again, I don't know where Jesus Aguilar is in DFA limbo. If he's somebody the Phillies can grab, I would at this point, and worry about where he's going to fit later. And Luke Voigt doesn't excite me either personally, but I suppose he'd be worth a try if he's the one that you're able to get. There's not the ideal player out there to just slot in from the outside, but hey, maybe you take a chance right now because at least it's a new look and a new lineup, and maybe it'll function. I don't know.
Well, all I know is that if they don't win 4 out of the next 6 games, 3 against the Nats, 3 against the Tigers, Philly fans, we're going to have to convince them to jump off bridges, Frank. Frank Klose joining us. Check out his Phillies mailbag with Mike Gill every Tuesday on the Sports Bash at Frank Klose on Twitter, where you hit him up with the mailbag questions. And check out all of his Phillies coverage over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Frank, appreciate you making a time on a Friday.
Hey, anytime, Josh.
We'll get back to you guys. Lots of comments next. 609-403-0973. That is the text board. You also can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Thanks to Steven Ventnor for his question. And I'll address one part of the CJ Cron, Kyle Freeland thing, but I think Frank didn't get to it. And by the way, good job by me earlier. Nick Nurse. Can Nick Nurse pitch for the Phillies? I mean, between Nick Nurse, Mike Gill used to pitch. Anybody else could pitch? Like, can we cobble together 9 innings for the Phillies on Saturday of people who are not on the roster to save on guys' arms? I mean, it's the game's tomorrow. They still have a starting pitcher in Dallas. I mean, what is going on here? All right, more Phillies, NBA talk, and more coming up next on 97.3 ESPN.
This weekend on ESPN Radio, interleague rivals go head-to-head at Dodger Stadium.
Judge swinging, drive, deep left field, way out of here.
Aaron Judge and the New York Yankees continue a West Coast trip in Los Angeles, where they'll face Freddie Freeman and the Dodgers.
Freeman center field, out of here.
The New York Yankees at the Los Angeles Dodgers. Coverage begins tomorrow at 6:30 Eastern. Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Ray Magliotta here for eBay Motors. So you ordered a new air filter for your car. You try to install it, but it doesn't fit. so you take a little bit off the sides. Well, still doesn't fit? Well, you could try to sit on it. Or get it right the first time with eBay Guaranteed Fit. When you see the check, you know that part's going to fit. Air filters, brakes, headlights, over 122 million parts. Get the right parts at the right prices. eBay Motors, let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Hey, it's Mike Gill. Trio North Wildwood is where casual elegance meets delectable dining. Experience the perfect blend of comfortable atmosphere and gourmet cuisine. Savor our chef-inspired dishes made with the freshest ingredients, featuring options for all tastes. Treat yourself to a night out at Trio North Wildwood and indulge in the ultimate dining experience. Reservations on Resi. Don't miss out on the taste sensation that is Trio North Wildwood. 700 New Jersey Avenue, North Wildwood. Chef-driven, quality-focused, TrioNW.com.
Homeowners trust Jenkins Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Business owners trust Jenkins, too, for light commercial services. No need to call the drain guy, the heater guy, or the plumbing guy. Call Jenkins. One call does it all. For new heating and air installation, service and maintenance, ductless air conditioning systems, water heaters, boilers, oil service, plumbing, and drain cleaning services. Call now and learn about rebates through the HVAC Energy Efficiency Program, brought to you by South Jersey Gas. Call 609-641-6262 or visit jenkinsandsons.com.
Matt Flat Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Get out of that old car, truck, or SUV and into a brand new Nissan. The all-new Matt Flat Nissan on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, or visit us online, mattflatnissan.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
I'll get to George and Summers Point in just a moment over at 609-403-0973. But I wanted to follow up on Steven Ventnor's question because, you know, I understand that Steve is taking a specific perspective, which is, hey, these guys are potentially out there. And it's not that, you know, I don't think that adding a CJ Cron or a Kyle Freeland could help this team, because we all know this team needs help. They're lacking of depth with all these injuries right now, and all of these guys going to and from the injured list is absolutely ridiculous. But I think the thing with Steven Ventnor, you have to, you know, kind of keep in mind is that something that, you know, when we listen to Dave Sampson, who was on with Mike Gill, the former Marlins executive, he talked about how all of these teams are under this delusion now that they're all way more competitive than they really are. And what teams are doing is, instead of looking at the why they have the record they have, they're instead looking at, hey, we're only X number of games behind. Okay. The Philadelphia Phillies right now are 25-31. The Colorado Rockies are 24-34. Now, on the surface, that sounds like it's pretty similar. Kind of the same team, right? Not really. The Colorado Rockies pitching staff has allowed 322 earned runs this year. The Phillies, 275. That is a huge difference. All right. Even with the Phillies pitching problems, their pitching staff is exponentially better than the Rockies. Hey, the Phillies only have one more win this year than the Rockies. The Phillies also went a month plus without their best player, Bryce Harper. They went a month plus without one of their starting pitchers, Ranger Suarez. They're playing right now without one of their more consistent hitters, Alec Bohm. And their $330 million acquisition, the offseason, the Trey Turner, is hitting below his season averages for his career. I did a little research earlier. Let me pull it up here. Trey Turner has a career 303 batting average. This year, he's hitting 236. 7 years, Trey Turner hits 303. This year, he hits 236. Over a 7-year period, he hit 356 on base percentage. This year, 279. That says to me, he's struggling. I'm not going to sit here and act like he's a bum. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's stupid. They should deal him. They should never sign him. But what I will say is that's who the Phillies got. When CJ Cron is supposed to be one of your best players, and as Frank Klose said, he's injured, He's not 100%. I mean, right now, you look at the Rockies roster. Their lineup is nowhere close to the Phillies on paper. Outside of Chris Bryant, Charlie Blackmon, and Ryan McMahon, nobody else on their team has any type of track record that gets you excited. I mean, Mike Moustakas is getting old. CJ Cron is getting old. Jerickson Profar, he was a guy maybe back when he played for the Rangers years ago. That's who the Rockies are. So the problem is as David Sampson pointed out on the Sports Bash a couple days ago, that these teams, instead of looking who their team is on the field, they're looking who their team is in the standings. And that's the problem. And so that's why, it's not that nobody wants to hear you, Steven Venner. It's not that nobody wants to acknowledge the Rockies are not a good team or that Kyle Freeland or CJ Cron could be acquired. It's that we understand the reality of the game. As Frank said, CJ Cron is not even available because he's injured right now. And as I said, CJ Cron's number splits are way better at Coors Field than anywhere else in baseball. And the Rockies not going to trade who's arguably might be their best pitcher right on the team. Okay, maybe not the best pitcher. That's an exaggeration. I mean, Kyle Freeland's probably the best pitcher in name on the team. Probably the best pitcher on the team. I mean that what's his name? That guy. I mean, yeah, he's probably their best pitcher. So if I was thinking of the guy Seabold, but he's a bullpen pitcher. So Seabold and Bird are two bullpen pitchers who are pretty solid, pretty good. But Marquez, that's the guy I'm thinking of. Marquez is not having a good year. He's not even healthy. So I can't even throw that into the conversation. But the problem with the Rockies is that when your best pitcher has a 4 ERA and you are trying to rationalize that you're still a contender, as Frank said, it's hard to sell it to your fans. George Summers Point chimes in at 609-403-0973. Says, hey, Josh, I agree that rarely firing a manager makes a team better. People always look for a scapegoat and a quick fix to a situation. Currently, the Phillies' whole team is underperforming. You can't change the whole team. So people want to change one person for the sake of finding someone to blame. This is the time when the veterans on the team like Harper and JT have to step up and take control of the clubhouse and leave the team out of this. If they do it, then the rest of the team will follow. Thanks as always, George Summers Point. George, it's a great point, and Frank brought it up a little bit as well. Your leaders have to step up in this situation. Harper, Romuto, Schwarber, anyone of veteran experience. I mean, I would even be okay if Craig Kimbrell said something. Like, you got to be, as a baseball player, willing to take accountability. Baseball is probably one of the most mentally taxing sports because the best people only succeed 30% of the time. Okay, having a 300 batting average, which means you only make 3 out of 10 hits. That's success. If you're somebody who has a strikeout per inning as a pitcher, you're considered great. So baseball in and of itself is a sport of not being perfect, having failure, having struggles. But as you said, George Zuber's point, someone got to step up in that locker room. You can't just keep blaming the manager and the hitting coach and the GM and the whoever else when the players got to do their job. And I don't know at this point, maybe it's a blessing in disguise that this team is struggling right now and not later, because on July 20th, it's a lot easier to turn around and say, hey, just go acquire somebody. It's harder to force guys to be accountable on June 2nd. I think that's where my mindset is. Maybe it's time for a closed room, a players only meeting or a, whatever, something that's going to force these guys to have conversations with each other, because one of the problems with sports today is that because of the environment that we all live in, people are less likely to talk to the person sitting next to them. They are much less assertive, much less vocal than they would have been in the past. You know, this was the 93 Phillies. People would be getting decked in the locker room probably. You think Dutch Dalton and John Kruk and all those guys would have sat back and just been like, okay, with everything that's going on? No, of course not. Or the 2008, 2009 Phillies. Do you think that Chase Utley and Shane Victorino and all those guys would have been just okay with this? No. I think the problem is that right now, the Phillies need someone to fire the guys up. Hey, we got 6 games against 2 teams that we are 100% better than. We have to beat them. Again, congratulations to Frank Vogel, Wildwood Zone, for getting the Phoenix Suns job. I am fascinated to see what he does in Phoenix because that team is at a very interesting crossroad. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. Have a great night, everybody.
You haven't downloaded the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app? Well, go get it now to follow all the Philly sports teams at 97.3ESPN.com. Powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.